Hi guys, Andy here, and I'm here to bring you all things mundane and makeup related. That's your vibe. I'd love it if you would subscribe to be part of my little slice of the internet. And in today's video, I am bringing you the 23 palettes that I used in the month of January. So if you want to see all 23 palettes and where I ranked them, let's get on into it. So, granted, some of these palettes will probably be in next month and they might not be in this order. But listen to the madness. So, and you know what's hilarious is I miscounted. Thought I had 25, I have 23. That's my bad. So we're going to start with, and this is spot number 23, it's the Natasha Denona Sunset Palette. I think this is in my year-long project pan, and I need a no pan left behind this palette, but the reason it's all the way at the bottom is because I only used this shade. That's it. I used it in a monochromatic yellow look, and I used this one shade. So there's a few palettes here at the bottom that they're at the bottom because I used one shade in them, and I just don't feel like if I used more than, if I only used one shade, I can't quantify putting the palette any higher. So it is a really good blendable matte. It was a very nice yellow. It was actually pretty true to color because I feel like Natasha Denona shades either come out lighter than they are in the pan or darker, but this palette is actually really true to color. So yeah, that one is number 23. Just putting it back in my drawer here of overflowing with palettes that I still need to use. And number 22, for the same reason, is Jubilee from Natasha Denona, because I only used this shade Limoncello, because it's not Lemoncello, it's with an I, so I think it's Limoncello. But yeah, that was my shimmer in the monochromatic look, and it was beautiful. Ooh, it's coming out there. It's a really nice yellow, because it's a more soft, pastel-y kind of yellow. I think it's from the pastel palette that I don't own, that I kind of regret getting rid of, even though I hated the palette. I regret getting rid of it for collector's purposes, because I did absolutely hate the palette. But yeah, so that's why that one's so low. In spot number 21, this is my Pan the Alphabet palette that I'm working on. It's the Milani Ungilded Most Loved Mattes. And I'm working on this shade right here, which is Bust a Mauve. And again, only one shade. I actually, in a different project, need to no pan left behind this palette, but I still haven't touched any other shade in this palette. I will say I'm getting hard pan in this shade, and it's super powdery, so it might be time for this one to go, but we'll see after I've used the whole palette. You can't get this palette anymore, and that upsets me greatly. Like, greatly. In spot number 20, we have the Nomad Love and Death palette, because I'm not going to say the name. So now I think, yeah, I did a collab look with this death side, which, okay, this side is much better than this pink side. I will show you up close. This is what my palette looks like. It's upside down. I really don't think that matters. This palette is so low because this month I repressed the shimmers, and that was such a pain in the ass. This is a shimmer formula that I have never worked, I've never seen this before, because these shimmers were so hard pressed to begin with, and it took 2 or 3 tries to get these to finally work. I probably lost a lot of shadow in the process, but they work now, and I think that that's what matters. So, yeah. I hate this palette now. I'm growing a growing hatred toward this palette because of the bull that I had to put up with it. I guess I'm just going to set them back down because I'm not going to sit here and put every palette away with you. Then in spot number 19, we have the Beauty Bay Midnight palette. And this was the January palette bingo palette. So, the mattes that I got in this palette, which I don't remember all of them, but I know I got this light purple. I know I got this deep dark blue. I think I got this purple as well. The mattes were patchy. And then I know I got this shimmer, which performed like a satin, and I did not enjoy that. And then I got this shimmer, which was absolutely stunning, gorgeous. So this palette just didn't perform for me. And I can already see in the shimmers in this palette that some are this beautiful. It's that like thin water-like formula where you can't feel it on the eyes. It's very reflective, shimmery. And some are this satin-like formula, which I just don't enjoy. So I don't know if this one's going to be for me. I do want to try it again before I would like declutter it, but I threw that into my revolving door wheel because I want to hopefully this year try it again. Next, in spot number 18, we have my Violet Voss Sun-Kissed Summer palette. And I did a Throwback Thursday on this. The mattes are blendable. The mattes are nice. I'm sorry that this is reflective here. The mattes are nice. I love them. The regular shimmers, I think I got this shimmer, Glow On. And I know I got Heat Wave, which was really nice. But my issue is this shade, Berry Hot. It looks like it would be a pressed glitter, but it's not. It is just a shimmer, but it's textured. It's like they wanted to do a pressed glitter, but stopped halfway through and didn't do a shimmer either, and it's awful. That shade is horrible, which is why this is so low. Like, it ruined my look, and I did not like it. Then in spot number 17, which is what I have on my face today, and I hate it so very much. Honestly, it's giving Harley Quinn, and I hate that too. So that's the Jeffree Star Controversy palette, the mini Controversy, which looks like this. I have the original one with Diet Root Beer. He came out with a newer one that has a green shade in the middle. And yeah, I used every shade in this palette on my eyes, and I don't like it. The only shades that performed well were Diet Root Beer, which is in the Conspiracy palette, and My Boyfriend's Purse, which is what's in my inner corner. I do really like that shade because it's a little darker than I would normally go for an inner corner, but it still is shiny enough. But yeah, so this is going to be a declutter, but I did no pan left behind this, so there we go with that. Oh, and I meant to say the Milani Most Love Mattes, I used that palette 5 times this month. For spot number 16, we have the Viseart Water Lotus. Just this little guy here. I know pan left behind this, obviously, it's just a little quad. And the 2 mattes in here are really gorgeous. They are pigmented, they are blendable. This dark shimmer, a gorgeous all over the lid. That's a duochrome, and you can really see that gold flip. That was beautiful. This light shimmer sucks. Couldn't really see it on the inner corner. It didn't do anything for the look. So, yeah, there is that. And I put this one away because this just goes in the front drawer. Next, we have the Viseart Amour palette. And the reason why I'm trying a bunch of Viseart palettes is so you'll see that in my February comparing palettes That Viseart, the Water Lotus, made my eyes water horribly. So I wanted to try other Viseart palettes to see if they're doing the same thing, because that's an allergic reaction. So then I tried this one, which looks like this. These two blushes, gorgeous on the skin. They do pull a little more warm on my cheeks than they look in the pan, but gorgeous. The two mattes, blendable, beautiful. This darker duochrome, gorgeous. And again, the lighter shade kind of sucked. Didn't really do anything for the look. So now with this one, while I had the eye look on, my eyes did not water, but it made my eyes ungodly itchy. And when I took my makeup off, my eyes watered all day, would not stop watering. We'll get to a third Viseart palette in 2 seconds, but I also no pan left behind that, obviously. Next, in spot number 14, we have the ColourPop Troublemaker palette, which looks like this. So I no pan left behind this. I used it twice to do 2 different looks. So the matte shades in this palette are great. This, like, it's a sequin shade, but it basically goes on like a burgundy matte. This is the most matte sequin shade I've ever used from ColourPop. That's really gorgeous. The shimmers are horrible. So these 2 shades are satins, and they're awful. I don't like satin formulas. So, like, for satins, they're fine. But I don't like satins, so they're awful. The duochrome, you can see the duochrome, but it has no shine, no anything. It's very dark on the eyes. Don't like it. This shade has no shine, no sparkle. This shade is a super shock. It has no shine on the inner quarter. No shine, no shimmer, no sparkle. Now this silver, beaming, it is basically the same shade as the one from my Blowing Smoke palette. The problem with this silver is it's textured and flaky and gets everywhere. So my goal is, within the next 2 or 3 months, I'm going to go through all of my ColourPop palettes with these bigger pans and figure out what shades I do and don't like, so I can mix and match color stories, because I hate the shimmers in this palette. So, yeah. So in spot number 13, we have the last Viseart palette that I tried in January. I have 2 more Viseart palettes, because I'm not decluttering these until I've tried all of them, because I spent a pretty penny on these. This is the Violetta. Gorgeous. This one is so pretty. So obviously I had no pan left behind this as well. Matte and the sequin shade, beautiful. This is a satin, and I didn't like it because, again, I don't like satins. But if you like satins, it's pretty. It's a gunmetal. This duochrome is very textured. It is flaky, but it does not get all over. It stays where you put it, but it is very, very pretty. This one only gave me itchy eyes. It did not make my eyes water. It just made my eyes a little itchy. So, and these are new. So all 3 of my quads I got in February of last year, so I've just now had them a year. My 2 ones with the blushes, I also got in 2024 through Ipsy. So who knows how old those really are, but itchy and watery eyes is a sign of an allergic reaction to the formula. And it's the mattes, because it's what I'm putting on my lower lash line and my outer corner that's making my eyes itchy and watery. So we shall see. All right. Those are just going to lay there, I guess. In spot number 12, we have the ColourPop The Child palette. This was used in a collab this month. And this is ranked so low because I only used 2 shades out of this palette, but they were good. They were better than everything else we've talked about. So I used this shimmer, Right Hand Mando, which was really nice. Thought it was a very pretty shimmer. And then I used this green right here in the middle, which is Babyface. And it was pretty. My only complaint is that the matte was pretty powdery and there was a lot of kick up. But this is an older palette and I would like to try this more before I make any full thoughts, opinions, any of that. In spot number 13, so now from here on out, I'm pretty happy with all of the palettes. We have the Natasha Denona Sunrise. This was the last palette I used in that monochromatic look, but I used the most shades from this palette. Like, this is what I reached from. I used this yellow, I used this shade, and I know I used Day Spring, and I think I used a little bit of Agate as well. But this is just a gorgeous palette. It's a gorgeous color story. I really love this one. The mattes and the shimmers are beautiful. So that's just a good one. In spot number 10, we have the Natasha Denona Yucca palette, which is the other palette that got paired with the Child palette. Again, I really like this palette. The mattes are softer, so they take a little more building, but it's a nice buildable formula. And I got to use this Plantation. No, this is Elysian shade, which originally I didn't think went with this palette, but when I used it in the look, it was stunning. The shimmers in this palette are unmatched, personally. So this month I used this Yucca palette twice because I also used it in my comparison video that went up this month. So the next palette, number 9, I decluttered and I don't currently have, but I do have a photo of it. It is the Cara Beauty Summer Days. It had great mattes. I loved them very, very much. They were pigmented, they were blendable, they were great. Everything else in the palette was bad. I liked one of the shimmers a lot. It was the shade Trippy because it was like duochrome and it had like that wet squishy formula. Everything else sucked. It had 2 like chunky glitters that were gross. They were so bad. I do not like Cara Beauty's glitter formula. It had, I think, 2 satins that, again, I don't like satins. It had 2 metallics, which were okay. And then it had another squishy shimmer, but the shade was just the same as Trippy, but a little more warm. And I just never reached for it. If I was going to reach for one of the squishy shimmers, I reached for Trippy. So it's really a palette I was only going to keep for the mattes, and I didn't see the point in that. So I used it twice this month. I no pan left behind the palette, and I decided to declutter it. In spot number 8, we have the ColourPop High Tide palette, which is what I compared the Viseart Water Lotus to. It looks like this. So I ended up using Currents, New Wave, Must See, and Just a Splash. And what I found you will see in February. But this is a gorgeous palette. I think it's ridiculous that they discontinued this. But the mattes are beautiful. The shimmers are great. And that satin shade is lovely. I love satin sequin shade. I love ColourPop sequin shades, personally. And I know I'm in the minority with that. The next palette I also decluttered and I don't have, but I do have a picture of. It is the Ace Beauty Tropical Vibes palette, which is what I compared the Yucca palette to this month. It's so pigmented. The mattes were so pigmented, but they were blendable. I think they were easy to work with. The shimmers in the palette were that very thin, wet formula. The Yucca palette did create a very similar look, and that Ace Beauty palette was very old. It was from their first release of that palette. So I just decided, since they were so similar and that palette was so old, that it was time to declutter it. In spot number 6, we have the Unearthly Don't Be Jelly. This will be February's palette bingo. I filmed it a little early. So that is what she looks like. I got to use the shimmers for the first time. I used this palette in What Do the 2010s Say, and I used all the mattes 5 times each, but I never touched the shimmers. So this was my first time using them. They were gorgeous. I've used Unearthly shimmers before, just not this palette. And yeah, it was beautiful, as I thought it would be. I really like Unearthly's formula, so it was gorgeous. Then we have the Blend Bunny Sugar and Grunge. This is in spot number 5. I did another Throwback Thursday with this palette, and I got a really dark, grungy look, and it was beautiful. This formula is gorgeous. I really love these shimmers. They're really nice. I think it's a beautiful color story. It's really unfortunate that this palette had to be discontinued over some bullshit. So, yeah. And then we get into spot number 4, which is the Ensley Rain Nutty by Nature. And I know Pan left behind this. So this is great quality. This one is in the lowest out of the 3 because of how warm it is. Like, it's a great fall palette, but it's just warm. This shade's super yellow on me. And my biggest gripe is I just don't love this red. It's a duochrome. And I didn't love it on the eyes. I don't really love that shade. But I still love the palette as a whole. And that can go right there. In spot number 3, we have the Beauty Bay Dark Fantasy palette, which I did 2 looks with this palette. Or maybe I only did 1 this month, but I've done 2 looks with this palette. Now this is the Blend Bunny Beauty Bay formula I want in every palette. The mattes were pigmented but buildable. They were gorgeous. All of the shimmers that I used were that wet, thin, metallic formula. Everything blended on top of each other. You could build and build and build. This palette was gorgeous and stunning, and I loved both of the looks that I did with that palette. So good. And then we have, in spot number 2, the Ensley Rain Hoppy Go Lucky. Again, great quality. I really like how cool toned this goes. The warm mixed with the cool kind of throws me off a little bit. And then this is just a normal shimmer. So, you know, that's why this one's second place. But I do really like this one. I think it's pretty. And in spot number 1 is the last Ensley Rain palette. It's What the Fox. This one is my favorite. I love it so much. The multi-chromes in this one are just to die for. I love the greens. This shade, Sly Fox, on my first eye skipped a little bit, but then on the second eye blended perfectly. So I feel like that was a me error. But this just built up to be the most gorgeous look. And this shade worked with my skin tone really nicely. And so did the one in Hoppy Go Lucky. That one's probably the closest to my skin tone because I'm more cool toned. But I love how these 6 pans are set up. And this one is just my favorite. So that concludes the January roundup of all 23 palettes, which is wild to me. I can't wait to see what all we do in February. And that's going to do it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.